You are dumb, unattractive, overweight, unworthy, untalented. Yes, I've been blessed to have 24 Grammys. Whatever you do, please don't ever feel entitled to win.
Oh, so I'm wrong. So I'm messed up. Well, which one of us is the one missing a bitch, Tom? You don't see me running around looking for a bitch. I know where all of my bitches are.
Look, Invincible is a pretty good series. Transitioning from comic to animated series was surely no easy task because, admittedly, the comic is hard to love. With the comic having lots of messed up elements, the story's main goal is to show that compromise takes both humanity and maturity. And as we're in season 3 of the show, we need to address the elephant in the room. And that elephant is that Mark is really, really, really wrong in season 3. I'll explain why. Invincible is a series about Mark Grayson, a young superhero who's trying to manage his powers, personal life, morality, and sanity in the midst of being thrown headfirst into the responsibilities of being a superhero. Realizing his father was not a kind-hearted man, but actually a delusional villain who thought humans were beneath him in season 1, Mark vowed to make any compromise necessary to reassure humanity and his family knew he would never be like his dad, no matter what. Then, season 2 happened.
I'll never let anyone ever.
No, not that. This is what I mean.
I'll work for you. I'll follow orders. I'll let you make all the calls. Just put me back out there.
Someone get this kid an earpiece.
So a young superhero learning how to manage responsibilities and personal values, it's a typical coming-of-age story, just with a lot of blood and guts. But with Mark being the main character, he has to embody the main moral of the story, that compromise takes both humanity and maturity, seeing that Earth has lots of super-gifted individuals who can pose a threat to average human lives, and that there are even bigger forces coming to Earth. Knowing when to make compromises and when to confront a crisis is vital when thinking of ways to save lives. As mentioned, the comic explored this through how different men confront the idea of compromise, with those who do seek it being more morally good than those who just want to dominate, most of the time. In season 1, Mark realizes the world is complicated thanks to deadly and greedy criminals on Earth, but is presented with an easy solution that could be in the form of a Viltrumite empire, an empire of aliens who only value colonizing in force, even just one of whom has the strength and ability to wipe out Earth with ease. Realizing that this would enslave humanity and that his father is torn about his mission, Mark appeals to the humanity deep inside his father to show this wouldn't bring him true happiness. Okay, good shit. This leads to season 2, where Mark started to
work with
Cecil, the man who's in charge of managing Earth's crisis, mostly America's. However, Mark was distracted with college, lacked proper communication with Cecil and loved ones, and was passive on training. Now, season 2 was about how one has to look at the value of humanity despite the mission, and that Mark is not just a college boy. He was a young man tasked with the responsibility of making sure Earth was safe from planet-ending threats. Since he is the strongest hero on Earth, being half Viltrumite, pay attention to this because this plays a factor. And eventually he stops going to college and begins to take his training seriously with Cecil to prepare for future threats, thanks to him killing a man in blind rage. Because Mark was all about not being like his dad, meaning he didn't want to be a man who willingly killed people just to make a petty point, Angstrom Levy is the truest test to Mark's fears. Angstrom was an insane scientist, targeting Mark's family for torture to lure him out. Stressed and traumatized, Mark pulverized Angstrom with his strength, seemingly killing him. With bloodied hands, he realized that despite having all the super strength in the world, he still was unable to handle a man who was mentally unstable without using brutal bloodshed, making him feel more and more like his father. So, he promised to work with Cecil and understood that he needs to be managed since he poses such a large threat to the world. And then season 3 happens. Over and over again. Mark agrees to work with Cecil, backs out for personal reasons, doesn't communicate or listen to anyone, then something bad happens, he runs back to Cecil and promises to work with him. You get my point. So what happens in season 3 was kind of inevitable. To set the scene for you, season 3 episode 1 shows us that Mark is trained to become stronger, but like in seasons 1 and 2, he's still losing fights despite them being more and more manageable. In one instance, he had to stop a group of human-level foes from killing a friend of his, and instead of finding a creative solution that didn't involve careless killing, He just mows through them with ease. Like he did with Levy, he didn't find creative solutions to handle a small-scaled fight. He just went and became brutal. This clashes against another fight where, instead of being a brutal fighter, he has to fight against monsters that weighed significantly less than the glacier he can lift. But he is still left weak and defenseless, despite him being the literal strongest character in the room. This results in Cecil sending in Darkwing, a hero who was killed in the past, and Reanimen, corpse-powered robots that could go toe-to-toe with Viltrumites but were created by the cruel and sociopathic D.A. Sinclair. Despite these folks saving Mark and the world from a deadly threat, Mark sees this and suddenly goes from weak and helpless to a man who can destroy a small country in a matter of minutes. All in the name of confronting Cecil. Like, where was this during the fight where the literal weight of the world depended on it? Episode 2 shows the backstory of Cecil and how he too was once a young man thinking similarly to Mark, that those who did evil acts don't deserve sympathy. Even though Mark preaches that those who do evil acts shouldn't be killed because they could change, when put into practice, Mark shows his true immaturity by refusing to acknowledge the people working to change. That's where Cecil contrasts with Mark by having grown up. Cecil learned that in order to save the world, you have to, at times, work with those who did wrong. Whether it's through them seeking redemption, working under your control, or begrudgingly allowing them to use their strength, safety is a child of compromise and logic. Now, that viewpoint can lead to problematic thinking, which a certain character will embody sometime soon. But recognizing the humanity in compromises is the main theme in the comics and show, which is where Cecil is at currently. Realizing these folks did indeed do wrong, they could be repurposed to save the world, and the world needs competent forces for protection. Mark, being young, doesn't think about this, and instead of talking about it with Cecil, he stomps into his office and disagrees in the most egregious way possible. Forget about not being like his dad. Forget about responsibilities. Forget about his remorse with Levy. Mark shows violent tendencies to the same man who saved his mother and helped train him, and is willing to almost kill a man to prove a petty point, like his father. He also delivers black or white ultimatums to the man in power with the same casual indifference as if he himself were the authority figure. Again, like his father. Episode 3 is where Mark goes to his mommy after he wet the bed with Cecil, claiming Cecil was wrong for working with murderers and putting a chip in Mark's brain as a safety backup in case of Mark acting out of control, which he did. Mark, despite trying to say he's morally superior with his viewpoint on not killing, coupled with his consistent losses in fights, unless it's to be petty, makes him read as not only just hypocritical, but ineffective in recognizing his responsibilities. This becomes more apparent when Oliver, Mark's younger brother, awakens his powers and kills the Mauler twins, who threaten to destroy the country in order to get resources. While Debbie's speech about valuing human life is something to note, Oliver's speech to Mark is the main question within this season, meaning that Mark has to see the importance of compromise and that killing to save others is different from killing for a petty point. This all leads to episode 4, where Mark time travels to the future and meets an insane immortal who is tasked to handle Earth while future Mark left the planet. The immortal begs Mark to kill him as his insanity has made him a cruel dictator, but Mark constantly refuses, focusing on the immortal's good deeds in the past, not the cries of a madman now. Only when he was left no other choice, Mark kills the immortal. Even though he says he values human life, he ignores villains who don't want to be redeemed. He ignores the call of those who need him. He's flaky with his much-needed training, and he shows both arrogance and periodic weakness in deadly battles. In other words, when in situations where he needs to kill and take the threat seriously, he doesn't. But when an inconvenience pops up, suddenly he can fight and puff up his chest. The dude is 19 and has been on Earth his whole life. He's not an 11-year-old boy with weird alien age-related biology. Rather than learn techniques to de-escalate small-scale fights or find more ways in effective fighting, he just keeps doing the same shit, expecting different results. Even Eve, someone who made a deadly mistake with the intention of saving lives, goes to college to learn how to better control her powers and do better. Why can't Mark? Now, in episode 5, he makes some effort to work with his family with relative maturity, but he's still scared to talk to Cecil about significant issues going on, which results in the prison's destruction and Multipol's escape. He gets some points for trying to work with his mother and girlfriend, but even then, he loses fights way more than a man with his strength and powers should. Obviously, he wises up in the comics, but the series just makes him unbearable. For a show that is willing to change races, genders, and stories of characters, they didn't change how annoying Mark is in this part of the story, and they give him no real wins. It just makes him a whiny loser who does nothing other than begging for adults to help him when he's the one in charge of saving the world. Characters like him have been all over the media and have gotten lambasted with disgust and annoyance. But here in the show, folks think he's in the right? Nuh-uh. He's a petulant child, one who needs to stop breaking the adult equipment and running to mommy, and actually listen and win for once without a petty motivation. Outside of him, the series is great, but good God, can the writers make this arc less painful? I don't care that the show is less well animated than Clutch Cargo. Just make Mark not an annoying man-child, please. I might be back with another review on him, depending. However, till then, like, subscribe, and please be more responsible than the man who's all down to say he values lives, but can't save the world from a mad king or a few bugs. Till later, bye.